Welcome to the MeatRx podcast. Want to transform your life with a carnivore diet? Head on over to meatrx.com today and sign up for a free 30-day trial. MeatRx has expert coaches, an incredibly supportive community, specialty meetings that cover all of your needs, and much more. MeatRx. Real people, real results.
Hey folks, it's Dr. Sean Baker. Low-carb, ketogenic, carnivore diets often will do better with electrolyte support. Element makes an excellent product, which I personally use every day. Element is running a free 8-count sample pack that you can get for a $5 shipping fee. You can use the link that is drinkelement.com/meatrx to get your free sample pack. Now, well, welcome anyway. So, and of course, you guys, if you have questions, maybe be sure and type them into the chat. So first of all, welcome and thank you for doing it. Sorry about the time. I know it's kind of, sometimes these time zones are difficult to keep track of, particularly when it gets all across the world, and it's tough to make these times. So thank you for, coming on a weird time for you. It's 10 o'clock in the morning for me, so this is pretty normal. You guys are in the Philippines, correct? Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tell us, just give us a little bit of your background. Now, Dr. Connolly, what you practice, was it radiology or what is your specialty?
Yeah. Just call me Raymond or Munich. My nickname is Munich.
Munich. What's your specialty in medicine?
I do nuclear medicine.
Nuke med. Okay. I was close. Radiology is kind of in the same part of the hospital.
Yeah. I've been in practice for like 18 years, and I focused on cancer imaging.
Right. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then Asra, what about you? What is your background?
I'm a lawyer by profession. Yeah. So I did my Master of Law in International Economics from University College of London, UCL, University of London. But I'm not working anymore right now. I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Uh-huh. Do you guys have some children?
Yes, we do have one daughter.
Okay. Yeah, that's
15. That's
a busy job too, for sure. It's one of the hardest jobs. I've got four of my own, and so it definitely takes up a lot of time. So I think, Asra, if I'm not mistaken, you started this carnivore diet first, if I'm not mistaken, right? And then you convinced him to do that. So tell me what sort of led you into, what was your background, and why did you start into this path down of a carnivore diet?
All right. So first of all, I actually didn't convince him to join me. He did it on his own. He decided to get in the carnivore diet as well after seeing my health transformation.
Yeah, but I mean, you convinced him then because he saw you.
Because at home, we don't talk about it. We don't talk about nutrition or diet. Like, he does what he does. I do what I do. Anyway, so let's start from the very beginning. And then if I forget something, I just backtrack. Okay. So I grew up in the 1970s in the rural countryside in the Philippines. And the typical diet concentrates around carbohydrates, mainly rice, some root vegetables like potato, taro, yam, plenty of vegetables, and plant foods. Lots of leafy greens and animal foods as well, like eggs, fish, chicken, pork, beef. We didn't really grow up on processed food. All the ingredients were bought fresh from the market on the same day and cooked by our moms at home. So it was a very balanced diet. I was fairly healthy growing up, but somehow in my 20s, I got into yoga. And within the yoga community, being a vegetarian is a big thing. My yoga teacher was a vegetarian. My yoga classmates were vegetarians, and it didn't take no time for it to rub off on me. The next thing I knew, I was eating less and less meat and more vegetables until I was a fully fledged vegetarian. At the time, I wasn't really fond of meat. it was very easy for me to be a vegetarian because I had a sweet tooth. I was really gravitating towards sweet foods, and vegetarian cakes, vegetarian pastries. And all throughout my 20s, my diet consisted primarily of oatmeal, beans, legumes, peanut butter, a lot of sweet fruits, lots of leafy greens, and no red meat whatsoever. Absolutely no meat throughout my 20s. My main health issue at the time was the constant fainting spells. It was very fortunate that every time it happened, I was never alone. Like there was always somebody with me to take me to the nearest infirmary or clinic, and they would just wait for me to regain consciousness. It was happening so often that it felt like normal to me. I didn't think too much of it. Like I would just lose consciousness and then later on just wait until I would regain consciousness again. Until that big moment when I had my major fainting spell. It happened while I was in the city. So I was brought to a big hospital and the doctors did full blood work on me. And I was diagnosed with severe anemia. And the doctor sat me down and explained to me that I had to be confined or admitted in the hospital right there and then. And we needed to talk about my bone marrow transplant. So that was like my wake-up call. The following day, I quit my job. I tendered my resignation. At the time, I had just returned from my Masters of Law in International Economics from London. I was just launching my career at the top law firm in the country. But I had to quit before even starting because my health wouldn't allow it. I was advised to lower my stress levels and not to work long hours and not to stay late at night. So I took advantage of that hiatus to take stock of my health. I started supplementing iron, but I still kept on the vegetarian diet because I was so convinced at the time that it was the most health promoting diet, that it was what's going to restore my health. So when I took my next blood work, my blood test, it was a little bit better than the first one. At least this time, I wasn't anymore a candidate for a bone marrow transplant. But I was still suffering from the constant fainting spells. We were already married at the time, and we were able to conceive right away. We had a honeymoon baby. But I gave birth via emergency cesarean section after 23 hours of labor without epidural. And the cause for the emergency was fetal distress. And we wanted to have at least 3 children. So we kept on trying for more. But I was struggling with fertility problems. I suffered 2 miscarriages and I developed endometriosis. All throughout this time, I was vegetarian. I was staying away from red meat, from meat altogether, because it was so ingrained in me. I had this thinking that red meat would cause cancer, heart disease, it was, and I still had my faith in vegetables. I was very much influenced by, I was studying nutrition very much at this time already. I was very much influenced by the works of Dr. Colin Campbell, the China study, by Dr. John McDougall, the starch solution, Dr. Esselstyn, the reverse heart disease book, Michael Pollan, the omnivore's dilemma. And all throughout these books, there's the common theme to drop the red meat and eat a lot of vegetables and go plant-based. So, to my mind, I was doing the right thing for my health. And so I stuck to that. And while I was battling fertility issues and fainting spells, our fertility doctor prescribed fertility drugs more iron supplements, some multivitamins. And I was also advised to put on some body fat so that to increase the chances of pregnancy. Because at the time, my body mass index was so low. What we did was to eat out at restaurants every day for 1 year, for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. While he would sit down, order steak, I would still order salad for breakfast, salad for lunch, and salad for dinner. And well, I did gain weight, but it was inflammation from all the vegetable oils and the seed oils that all restaurants use. There was no improvement in my health. I was still, very much into vegetarianism. I couldn't give it up. I had, it was like almost like second nature to me to always like order, gravitate towards salad, thinking that it was nourishing me. But at that point, had no success in fertility. There was no improvement in my fainting spells, and I was rereading all these books by Colin Campbell, Dr. SLC, and John McDougall, and I was thinking maybe I wasn't vegetarian enough. Maybe I needed to eat more vegetables, and that's when I went full vegan. And when I did that, from being vegetarian for 20 years and then going vegan, my health issues went, took a turn for the worse. The first thing that I noticed was I had a severe eczema on my hand. It was so hideous, like you could see there was like pus and crusted secretions of the pus. It was like so inconvenient. I had to cover my hand when taking a shower because it was a massive eczema around here. And at that time, when I was a free vegan, my diet consisted of like smoothies, kale, spinach blended with almond milk, with flax seeds, chia seeds, cacao powder, every superfood that I could get my hands on, thinking that, when I did this vegan diet, I was really going for all organic, no expense spared, like all the superfoods that were recommended. For lunch, I would have a big bowl of salad again, and then sweet potatoes for dinner. And then in between meals, I would drink green tea, all the health promoting foods that are so popular. And I noticed that it just kept getting worse, the eczema I had on my hand. And what I did was sort of like an elimination diet at this point, because I was like so baffled by that development, on top of my fertility issues and fainting spells, I was having this severe eczema. I was expecting an improvement in my health, and then it was just like getting worse. I listed down every food item that I ate every day, and I noticed that over a course of 2 months, it was changing slightly what I ate. But there was only one thing that was constant, and it was the only thing that the thing that I least expected, because it started as a health food item, and the culprit turned out to be green tea. The day that I removed green tea, that was the last thing that I eliminated. The moment that I removed green tea, a few days after, it cleared. And the entire eczema went away. And that single experience, that self-experiment, cemented my conviction that the relationship between food and health, food and disease, is not just a random correlation. It was a direct causation. That experience emboldened me to continue my logging, my food diary. Because at that time, the health ailments I was noticing were like piling up. I mean, by this point, because towards the end of my 1 year being on a vegan diet, I was no longer cooking the vegetables. I was already doing a raw vegan version. Like I would eat a bunch of lettuce and eat it with a bunch of papaya, for example, or a bunch of celery with a bunch of mangoes. that was like my daily diet for all my meals, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's all raw. So I was totally raw vegan for the last 3 or 4 months. I was practically running on sugar, specifically fructose. And I listed down all the other ailments I was experiencing, on top of being, fertility issues from being vegetarian and fainting spells. I had several fungal infections. I had nonstop toenail fungus and recurring eye sty or eye infection. I had boils all over my body. And I had, for the first time ever in my life, tinnitus. And then I had on my hips, I had arthritic hips. My joints were aching. My wrists were so painful. My back was so painful. It was like a laundry list of aches and pains that just propped up. I don't know if it's because I was already 40 at the time, or it's most likely because of the diet that I was on. By this time, I was already, 20 years a vegetarian and 1 year vegan. And so all of these were accumulating. And I remember being unable to go to my yoga classes anymore because even my instructor was cautioning me against going because I might injure my wrists. I had to go to my classes with bandage around the wrist. And they had to modify even the basic poses just for me so that I wouldn't be injuring my wrists. And I had to be sent to a corner in the class so that I wouldn't be distracting the other students in the class. So I felt like a person with disability. I felt like a handicap, not being able to perform basic yoga poses. And it wasn't enjoyable anymore. It's like not being able to do the one thing that you enjoy the most in life. It's just like not being able to lift anymore or not being able to row anymore. It was really devastating. It was soul crushing. I had to stop yoga for a while, for almost a year, because I needed to protect my wrists. And I thought I chalked it up to age. I was thinking maybe it's part of old age. I mean, what can you do? That's how it is. There's no way out of it but medication. You have to deal with the pain. So that's that's already the end game of my veganism. I was already questioning this diet from the moment that I eliminated the green tea, which is touted to be a very healthy drink. At the time I was already thinking that maybe even the kale is questionable. If green tea is that questionable, maybe even kale, maybe even spinach. So I had a change of mindset. And surprisingly, at this point too, I started craving meat, which was very, very unusual because I never liked meat. I mean, you could attest to that. I never liked meat all my life. It wasn't something that I would crave. But maybe at this point, my body was starved of nutrition. And I started dreaming about meat. I'm dreaming of steak, and salivating at the thought of it. But I didn't jump right in. I did it very cautiously. I started first with adding some, eating some eggs, some fish, the gentler ones, some chicken, and eating less and less of the vegetables. I became very suspicious by this time already. I became suspicious of anything that's, that's plant-based. I've been very doubtful since my experience with the green tea. I became suspicious of everything else from the plant kingdom. And I started, removing them one by one and adding in more and more animal products that my body was craving and crying out for. And I noticed that the more I did that, the less vegetables I ate and the more meat I put in my body, the better I felt. Until the moment when I dropped the last bit of vegetable and I ate entirely steak, just meat in one sitting. That one meal was like the perfect meal. And I really felt the euphoria. I felt like my body was singing. It was really it was finally satisfied. I distinctly remember that feeling of just totally removing all the plants and eating nothing just but steak in one sitting in a meal. as a meal in itself. And that was like the turning point. That's it. And I dove right in because I couldn't question my experience, even though it went against everything I thought I knew about nutrition, even though it went against everything that's recommended by people that I trusted, that I put my trust in, all these books that I read, all these books I followed to the letter. They look so beautiful and grand on paper, especially the China study. It was so comprehensive. It was so convincing. It was such a strong argument for the plant-based diet. I had to set that aside because it did not agree with my own personal experience. And I do believe that the highest form of science is our own personal experience because nobody can refute that. I mean, what you actually experienced, that euphoria that I felt upon eating steak, and the disappearance, the slowly, like little by little, all my ailments went away. The aches and pains, the eczema, the fungal infections, all the ailments went away. My joint pains, my wrists just disappeared. Like all the aches. And I'm not taking any medication, no supplementation, or nothing. It's just all based on changing the diet, changing what I ate from plant-based to totally, fully meat-based diet. That experience alone for me was like the turning point and more convincing than any other body of work or any other masterpiece in nutrition that's out there in any book, in any best-selling book. So like that has been my experience. That was 4 years ago, and that has been my experience until now. And now I'm happy to say that I've been doing yoga every single day without any bandage, without any yoga block, not feeling like a handicap. Actually, I feel like I do even better than those who are younger than I am. We'll be turning 50 next year. But like those who are in the 20s or 30s who are like straining with the poses, I felt like that when I was in my 20s and in my 30s. And I was a vegetarian at the time. But now my yoga is so powerful and effortless. Like totally, my joints are like totally solid, like a well-oiled machine, working like on full capacity. So I'm really very thankful for this diet, for the carnivore diet, because it has really restored my health and restored my zest for life. It has restored my love for yoga and my reason for living. So like it is really sort of like a miracle rejuvenation. So I can't sing enough praises for it. And that's why I created the YouTube channel, so I could just talk and talk on and on about it. Because it's totally, really, really amazing. And so after being on this diet for 3 years, my husband noticed my health transformation. And on his own, without my prodding, without my talking him into it, he jumped on it as well. And we will talk about his experience itself.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, with regard to yoga, one of our members, Kiki Flynn, who she just set a world record in yoga. She's on carnivore. She did downward dog for over an hour and like 18 seconds.
Wow.
Record as a yoga practitioner on a carnivore diet. So, certainly your experience is not unique. I just wondered, Munich, I wanted to, because you're a physician, you're seeing your wife struggling all this time. It's got to be something you're aware of. You're like, what the heck can you do? I've got loved ones when I see them in pain or having an illness, we're trying to figure out what you can do. You're using your background. But did you think anything? I mean, you've known her for, 15, 16, or how many years you guys have been together. I know you said you had a 15-year-old kid and you have a honeymoon. So I'm assuming you've been married about 15 or 16 years. And in that time, did you ever think, man, this vegetarian diet is maybe not the right answer? Was that ever something that you thought about while she was going through all this stuff?
Well, I brought her to my place of work. We did some tests, the usual, and then she was prescribed medications, but they didn't really work. So even the green tea, the culprit, no one knew about that. Not only she was able to figure that out, that she was allergic to green tea. I mean, who would think that, would be allergic to green tea? I mean, at that time, no?
It's interesting. There's a study out there looking at green tea and showing that the effects, the healthful effects, are not really there. Because a lot of people drink green tea because they think it's healthy, and there's actually studies looking at, I think it's antioxidant properties. I haven't read that paper in a while, but it's actually uses green tea as a proxy for the phytochemicals in fruits and vegetables, and showing that they really don't have a benefit and maybe are potentially negative. But and I know I want to hear Munich's story before we talk a little bit how you kind of transition. And I know you were doing some raw meat type stuff and stuff like that. But tell us about Munich. Tell us about so you saw her, you observed her getting healthy. Were you? I mean, you weren't a veg. Were you a vegetarian at the time, or what was going on with you?
No, I never was. Since childhood until probably about 5 years ago, I'd been eating the standard mixed diet. I love meats, I love steak, but then I had to eat that with salad, with vegetables, with soda, with fruits, because I was told, right? That's a healthy or balanced diet. But I only have two major problems. One is my irritable bowel syndrome. I've been having that for like so many years. My IBS is the diarrhea type. Every time I eat, in 30 minutes to 1 hour, I would go to the bathroom. Either I'll have explosive diarrhea or squirty diarrhea. Sorry, those eating there, but that had been my routine. I eat every meal. I would go to the bathroom in 30 minutes to 1 hour, no fail. So there was a time that I got used to that. But then there are frequent attacks of diarrhea, even at night. That I wake up at night, I go to the bathroom like even 10 to 15 times, and so I would lack sleep, and then the following day, sometimes these attacks of diarrhea would last for like a week or 2 weeks, and then I would go back to normal. My poop becomes solid, and then but I would eat the same things, and then I would have diarrhea again. So this really affected my work and my life, because in the hospital, I go to different hospitals. I used to go to different hospitals. So the first thing I look for when I go to the hospital is look for the nearest bathroom. So it really affected my life. Corollary to that, I don't know if it's related, but I'm sure it is. I always have this bloated feeling. It also wakes me up at night. I burp 100 times a night. So this occurred, for like so many years. And then I started 5 years ago, probably, with intermittent fasting. I was on the heavy side. Okay, I started with intermittent fasting. I think that the result was great. I lost weight, probably around 20 pounds. It was great, but then I ate the same food, but different eating time. because, and then I would say probably I had a relatively low carb diet, but then my IBS came back, and then it didn't really go away. Okay, and my bloatedness, so it's really hard. And then that's the time I was observing her, and then the transformation that she had, no, and then of course with some research and talking to colleagues, and then of course following you and the other carnivores. I tried the carnivore diet, and purely animal based, and then that's my story. My IBS totally was gone. No? Right now of course I don't miss it, but I don't know the feeling of having diarrhea anymore. I poop 2 to 3 times a week now, compared to before when I had to poop like more than 5 times a day, and all watery. I've tried the different medications, but they didn't really work. So I can attest to that. So, but this diet really did amazing things. No, it really cured me. So now I don't feel anything. I'm back. My energy is back. I sleep well. My focus is back. So I am just thankful. So I cannot think of any other diet.
When Asra was first started doing this all meat diet, were you concerned about that? Because the typical thing is you're going to have some deficiency, you're going to have colon cancer, heart disease. I mean, as a physician, because we all train, kind of under the same thing where, we've got this belief that meat is somehow.
Yes,
I didn't. I don't know what it's like in the Philippines, but I know in the U.S. that's often the case. But did you have any concerns for her doing that diet when you're watching her do that, or did you see her get improvements?
Yes, at the start we had some discussions on that. Actually, warning her on cancer, a lot of stuff like heart disease, things like that. Because yes, we follow Western medicine, and then I realized we have to go back to our evolutionary human diet. I was telling her, we doctors are not really experts in nutrition, because nutrition is something not taught in detail in med school. No, so I was telling her that. So we have to really go deeper and go back to our evolutionary human diet.
So I mean, obviously, as a physician, I'm sure it's very convenient having to go to the bathroom all the time. Do you? And you've been on this not as long as Asra. I want to go back to you because I know you were doing carnivore diet, and you were doing a lot of raw meat foods. Is that still part of the diet? Is it still how you do it, or what was the evolution of the diet for you? How did that go?
Oh yeah. So the first year it was all cooked steak. It was like ribeye steak all throughout. That was the first year because that's what I was craving. And then that was every day. I was surprised because in spite of my frame, I'm only 5'1". And I was consuming like 2 pounds of steak a day because that was what I was hungry for. Because otherwise, I wasn't really satiated. Transitioning from being vegetarian, vegan, it was like I was used to having massive amount of food in my stomach, and it took quite a substantial amount to fill me up. So I was consuming like 1 pound of cooked steak. That was my 1 year, the first year of me being a carnivore. And then towards the end, like maybe 1 year, 2 months, I started craving more fat and started craving also organ meats like liver, which I actually grew up on. So it wasn't really a new thing to me. I started craving this. So I followed my gut, my cravings, and I incorporated a little bit of organ meats to my carnivore diet and gravitated towards more fat. And rib eye just wasn't cutting it anymore. So I had to switch to pork belly, which had a higher fat to protein ratio. And at this point, I noticed that I needed less food to be satiated. It was less than a pound. And I just went with it. I was, by this point, I was already trusting very much my gut instincts, my intuition, it was intuitive eating that I was doing. So just going by the flow of what I was actually naturally or organically craving. And I wasn't really aware of it at the time, but I was actually doing a Paleolithic ketogenic diet, which I didn't even know was a thing then. I just found out later on that it's a thing that's like the prescription of paleomedicina, which is like 300 to 400 grams of meat total, and that's under 1 pound of meat a day with organs, regular consumption of liver, and a small portion of meat compared to the classic, carnivore diet. So I was on that for quite a while. And then like after a few months, I started to have maybe, I don't know if it was like histamine reactions or something, or like oxalate dumping, but I experienced like runny nose, itchy eyelids, some skin rash, some kind of like swelling of my eyes after eating. It turned out to be like quite common because that's what I noticed from my group on YouTube. And but I kept on because I still felt good. I mean, there's no way I was gonna leave the carnivore diet. It seemed like just a minor hitch, like it's a minor snag on the road to recovering from being vegetarian and vegan. It wasn't like a deal breaker for me or anything like that. It was just something like, it was kind of odd. Why was this happening? We could chalk it up to probably oxalate dumping, considering the amount of spinach and kale and cacao powder, cocoa that I consumed, almond milk. I consumed massive amounts of those during my vegan days. It's probably that or whatever. But the point is, it was just temporary. And at that point, while I was experiencing that, I wasn't anymore like enjoying my cooked pork belly, my seared liver, and the seared fat. So I started craving it like fresh. Because at that point, even my steak, I was cooking it more on the rare side, like still cold in the middle. So I started craving my steak like tartare style, like what you would have in Paris, right? So that was how I would consume it with some fresh eggs, like also some raw dairy. It was only at this point in my carnivore journey that I craved raw dairy. I don't know why, but then I just gave in to my craving, and that lasted only for 1 year. It just seems like I've been on raw primal for a long time because that was the stage I was at when I launched my YouTube channel. So every video that I had was featuring my raw primal food of steak tartare and fresh eggs and raw dairy. It seemed like such a long time because I had like 250 videos of me eating those foods. But that only lasted for 1 year. Because after a year of that, I was okay. I discovered it when I traveled, because we travel a lot as a family. I traveled, I went to Bali, and that it's a Hindu community and beef is off the table. It's all pork. And I never eat pork raw. I only eat steak tartare, like ruminant meat. fresh, but never chicken raw, never pork raw. So when I was in Bali, I cooked all my food. I cooked all the pork. That was the only available meat when I was on vacation there. I was there for 1 month. So I had no choice but to switch to cook. I was cooking up pork and cooking up eggs. And I realized I don't have any more reactions that I had before to cooked meat. So I just kept on eating cooked meat. And that's something that I could enjoy with my daughter, with my husband, because they're kind of grossed out by steak tartare all the time. They were seeing me eat that. It wasn't really a pleasant sight, especially to an impressionable, 14-year-old, 15-year-old with a very strong opinion. I mean, she's really strongly opinionated and she has no qualms talking it or speaking it out. So like, I don't have to feel anymore like the odd man out in the family because we're all eating the same things. I cook the same batch of meat and we all share it. And so like for 4 years that I've been on a carnivore diet, 3 years is cooked and only 1 year was raw primal. During that, sort of like a transition stage where I was experiencing some kind of oxidate dumping / histamine reactions. God knows who. I mean, who really knows, right? But the point is, I'm thriving on a carnivore diet. Whether it's cooked or raw, it doesn't really matter. But I enjoy it more in the cooked form because it's something I can share. It's a lifestyle that's shared with my family. And we could all take part in and enjoy it together. And I also noticed that I made a video about it, that there's not much difference. Because a lot of people are so stuck on like it has to be eaten raw to get all the nutrients and everything. There is not much difference. Like his remission of IBS, the reversal of all of my autoimmune issues was not affected at all by eating it cooked. It doesn't really matter whether it's raw or it's cooked. You eat it what's important is it's not so much whether it's raw or it's cooked meat, as what's more important is whether you're eliminating all the plant-based foods, all the seed oils, the vegetable oils, the sugar, all the other like the condiments that are probably like stalling you, and also dairy. It's a kind of problematic. I'm about to make a new video about it. I just I've done some experiments on it and I realized that it's not exactly optimal after all. Because in my raw primal stage, I was incorporating some raw dairy. And now in hindsight, I'm looking back and I think that it's not at all beneficial. It doesn't add anything to the carnivore diet that's beneficial. It could be detrimental. It could be actually harmful, in fact. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And it's interesting because I often get people telling me that if I'm not eating raw meat, I'm doing it wrong. And and I've also I've also experimented with that. I just didn't get much out of it, and it wasn't very particularly satisfying. I didn't look down to enjoy eating a cold piece of meat. I just never have. And it's interesting that that what I see is the people that do this for long periods of time, like many years, they all kind of end up in the same place. And it just eat some cooked steaks and that's where most people end up after lots of self-experimentation. They kind of come to that realization. And I think it's just a unique observation. So thanks for sharing that. Because I know, like I said, I see where, maybe perhaps for a period of time, these other foods, perhaps if there's a role that you're sort of bringing yourself up from a very nutritionally depleted state, you might be able to facilitate that a little quicker, perhaps, maybe not. But I just sort of always sort of say, keep your mind open. And I'm not opposed to people trying raw stuff. I think it's fine. I think the risks for infection are they're not zero. They're certainly there, but they're overblown. And certainly, if you're cautious about how you source and how you prepare, you should be okay. And I'm assuming that in Munich, you just were always on the cooked meat. You never got into the raw stuff, or you just kind of straight up cooked from the beginning.
Yeah, I never liked the raw
Sashimi.
Well, sashimi I do, and I tried steak tartare, but no, I like mine cooked.
Yeah, me too. And I think humans have been cooking meat for a long time. Oh, several 100,000 years, if not a few million years, depending on whose anthropology you believe in. But the Philippines is obviously a place where there's a lot of seafood. I mean, you guys are, a huge island with, I don't know, how many people, I think there were 200 million people in the Philippines. There's a lot of people there. How many people are there? Well, I know that region. I know Indonesia is huge. I mean, and I know you guys have, that whole region is just a lot of people there. Seafood part of your diet, is that something you find that was helpful?
Seafood. Well, yeah. We have 7,100 islands here. And especially in my province where I grew up, we live by the sea. In fact, my province is the seafood capital of the country. I used to like seafood, but compared to meat, compared to steak, I would rather have steak than seafood. I don't know. It's just steak is just so satisfying.
And I think many of us would agree with that. I mean, the same thing with things like chicken and stuff like that. I mean, it's obviously chicken is largely taken over beef in lots of parts of the world just because it's a faster food to produce and it's more efficient to do that. But what about pork? I mean, is pork still part of the diet there? I know you'd mentioned in Bali, you guys were kind of relegated to eating pork. Do you still include a lot of pork on the food?
Yeah, we do a lot of pork right now, especially because it's the pandemic and we're not encouraged to go out daily for grocery. So we have this delivery from a biohog farm, it's an organic farm that raises free range pigs. So that's where we are getting our food supply right now, because we don't have delivery for beef. So it's just really a matter of logistics. And we've been enjoying this really good quality pork, really fatty, like lots of pork belly. So that's actually our current diet at the moment during the pandemic.
And just interestingly, this is kind of an interesting observation. And I've mentioned this before in the past, but there's some studies on stable radioisotopes done in the Pacific Islands, and what they found was that the people, and this is 600 years ago or something, the Pacific Islands have not been occupied by humans for that long. It's been, one of the later places, when you go into Tonga and Fiji and some of these places, not exactly the Philippines, but in that part of the world. But and they're islands with a lot of seafood. But what they found out is actually they brought pigs with them and they fed the pigs the fish and then ate the pigs. So they kind of opted out of eating much fish. And so it was kind of an interesting thing that even though they're surrounded by protein in the form of fish, they opted for, the fat that came with the pigs because fish tend to be pretty lean. And so it is right that pork is a hugely popular dish in that part of the world. And I think for many good reasons. I think it's part of that has to do with the fat content in there. Are you still eating a kind of a ketogenic, you mentioned pork belly. Are you guys still kind of focusing on fat intensive diet, or are you kind of, do you consciously think about how much fat you're eating versus protein?
We don't even think about it anymore. Actually, it has become like a second nature. We've been on it for more than 1 year. It's like already second nature for us to crave fat first. Like that's what we always aim for. And that's what we always look for when looking for something to eat. Like we just had a meal today, and he left out all the the pork belly has the protein part. He only ate the fat part and left out the entire pork for me. And I was like, how am I supposed to eat this? I know that he knows I don't eat the lean meat. So sometimes we just, really don't know what to do with the lean part of the pork belly, because both of us are fighting for the fatty part. We don't even think about it anymore. It's really automatic.
Don't count.
Yeah, we don't count macros, not at all. But when it comes down to it, sometimes when I'm just curious, I want to see, how much are we eating? And then when I weigh it, I look at it, it's very close to the PKD ratios, and even the food amount. The amount is very close to that. because we don't really do much, it's not physical labor. It's just really like more mental exertion that we do. So our food amount is less than, around 1 pound a day. And most of it is fat, like 80% plus, minimum of 80% by calories. And when you look at it visually, it's like a third of it is pure fat and the third is lean meat. So it's really fat heavy diet that we're on.
Yeah, and you guys are obviously not obese. I can say that just from looking, or at least from the part I can see. I mean,
I was.
He used to be. He used to be huge.
I lost 40 pounds.
40 pounds. So that is quite a bit. Let me ask you, Munich, since you've been doing this for a year and you're working in a hospital, I mean, nuclear medicine usually in the basement, and it's usually, I don't know how much interaction you get with people. Are people at work noticing, and have you let them know that you're doing this? Is that, and if so, has anybody thought that's unusual?
Yeah, they thought, they were actually curious. Nowadays, I don't go to the hospital. I have my own PET-CT center. It's a standalone PET-CT center. But even my colleagues, sometimes I visit the hospital. So no, they get surprised. Why the weight loss and I also tell them that this is my diet, and this is the diet that I know has cured my IBS, and this is the diet that gives me energy, and I'm back to life. So plus the significant weight loss. I promote this diet as well. When they ask, I discuss.
What because I've never been to the Philippines, and I don't know what the situation is there. Is obesity becoming a problem in the Philippines yet? Is it starting to where we're seeing a lot more of that in recent years?
Well, actually, yes, because we're so much Americanized here. So whatever diet you have, we 80% we adopted. As I've said, we're Americanized here. So the standard American diet is here. So I think obesity ranks high in the list of morbidities and mortality.
And do you guys have like national nutritional guidelines there, like we have in the U.S.? Is there kind of a national policy on what they direct everybody to eat, or is it still kind of based on whatever families want to eat?
Well, I guess we have, but people here, I don't think they pay attention to those guidelines.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing in the U.S. People don't want to pay attention, but it's kind of mandated in schools and federal facilities and places like that where you don't have a choice what you're going to eat. But it influences the food manufacturers as well. Somebody, I think Vimal was asking Oscar or Munich if you can comment. I noticed you mentioned you source your pigs, your pork from a particular organic farm. Do you find a difference between animals that are sort of, I don't even know if it's an option. You could probably, much of your beef probably comes from Australia, I'd imagine. But do you guys, unless there's a lot of cattle in the Philippines, which maybe there are, I don't know. But do you find that there's a difference between grass finished meats versus grain finished meats? Is that made a difference in your own particular health?
Actually, we don't have any grain finished meat in the Philippines. All of our beef are 100% grass fed. It's just the economics. Grass is free on the pastures, and if they would have to be fed grains, then the farmers would still have to buy those grains, and they don't do that because we have plenty of vast pastures for grazing cows. So all of our beef are actually grass-fed, which is not, exactly a good thing in terms of taste, because you don't get the intramuscular marbling that you have in the US. We don't have marbled steak here. That's why when I was in a beef only diet, eating local beef, I was struggling with fat, with incorporating fat because of the, rabbit starvation and the too much protein. It was our beef is so lean. Even the ribeye, it's like you look at it, a cut of ribeye is entirely red. You wouldn't see any streak of fat. There is no marbling whatsoever, zero marbling, because it's all 100% grass fed. And the cows are really lean. They walk around, they graze outside in the sunshine, in nature. It may be good, for the omega-3 ratios, but in terms of satisfaction and satiety, it has zero fat, so it doesn't really cut it. You have to source the fat separately. And for that, we had to buy suet, the fat around the kidney, or visceral fat, which is not the same. Like in the US, you have this prime cut of a ribeye steak that's really well marbled, so juicy, that's intramuscular, marble. We don't have that here. So there's no comparison between grain-fed, grain-finished, or grass-finished. That doesn't exist here. It's all 100% grass-fed.
Yeah, I was just doing some looking here. I guess in the Philippines, there's 2.5 million cattle, 2.5 million cows, and 108 million people, at least as of, I think, 2019. And the U.S., it's like 90 million cattle and 330 million people. So you guys, have only 2%, where we're is about one third of the population is matched by a cow, and you guys are 2%. So you guys have much less likelihood of getting beef there. Do you find that, you had a YouTube channel. Somebody asked me if it was discontinued, or somebody said something like it was gone. I remember hearing something.
Yeah, I archived it. I have an old YouTube channel, which I archived temporarily during the pandemic. And I didn't, when I wanted to relaunch it, it was actually because I archived it because I wanted to take, a little break from social media during the pandemic. But then, my health transformation came out in a major newspaper, and we were flooded with a lot of questions. So I thought I had to open the YouTube channel again. And I was thinking whether to continue that or to launch a new one. I thought that I'd rather launch a new one because the old one doesn't reflect my current way of eating, because that was entirely raw primal. And my current way of eating is really cooked meat, which I share with my family. And my husband is also taking a big part in my new channel. So that's what I'm having right now, just to continue with sharing the information so that we could answer all the questions that we're getting. So I'm continuing this channel to help to continue propagating the health benefits of the carnivore diet. And for those who are starting on a carnivore diet, this is a good place to start, because the old one was kind of too hardcore. I mean, might not, be a good place to start for someone who's just hearing about the carnivore diet for the first time. They think that, do you have to eat raw meat right away? I mean, no, not at all. I want them to start where I started. And I started the easy way, just like this. Just eliminate little by little all the vegetables, the plant-based foods, and incorporate a lot of animal foods. That's what my current channel is all about right now. And it's all cooked meat. So it's very easy for everyone to follow.
Yeah, there's and I think that's something I think a lot of people, particularly when they want to portray this diet in a negative light, they make the impression that everybody's eating these raw brains and raw kidneys, and this is what we see in the media to try to dissuade for people from doing that. And I think if you tell people, hey, you can have a hamburger cooked or a steak cooked, and that can be your meal, that's more approachable for most people. And I think that's good. And I'm not going to dismiss the fact that some people get benefits from experimenting with raw. I think that's on the table. But I mean, to portray that as, there are people out there that will say that's the only way you can do this diet, and it makes it very inaccessible to most people, because most people aren't. I would have never done that if I was under the impression it's the only way I could do this diet, I would have never started it. I know it. So, I mean, I'm glad that you've kind of come around. And then I guess, Munich, I mean, as a physician, you're on the YouTube channel. I mean, you'll probably discover what I discovered, through social media, you can impact the lives of many, many, many people, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people potentially through this sort of message. Whereas owning a PET scan center, you're going to take care of, 15, 20 people a day, maybe, or something. I don't know, whatever, just, something like that. The impact you reach will be a lot less. And again, you're diagnosing things, maybe perhaps treating some things that are after the fact. And we would rather, as physicians, have healthy people. I think that's why we all go. We'd rather, get people healthy, and hopefully you don't need a doctor anymore. That would be the great thing. But that's a tough part of practicing medicine, is it's not really set up for that. It's set up for recurring, continued business. And the easy thing is we've got so many sick people that there's a never-ending supply of sick people. But the good thing is you can maybe get them not sick instead of just applying Band-Aids, which I think much of what we do in allopathic medicine is. It's been almost an hour. Is there anything else you guys would like to share before we go?
Anything?
Yeah. First.
Yeah, more improvements aside from IBS. I noticed that he doesn't snore anymore.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a major thing. Yeah. That's like dramatic. I didn't expect that, but yeah, that's another thing.
Yeah, that makes for a better marriage, when you can actually get some sleep,
And also better mood for both of us.
Sure,
there's less quarrels, less disagreements, because we're both zen and more centered.
Mm-hmm.
So it also works for, you're right, the better marriage as well, because of the improvement in mood for both of us.
No discussion, because she cooks for me. So,
do you find that in the Philippines, is this what has been the reception? Has it been mostly negative, or just kind of curiosity, or is there a huge plant-based push in the Philippines? What's been the climate?
Well, yeah, there is. Just like in the US, there's a big group of vegetarians and vegans. I don't know any carnivore doctor yet here in the Philippines.
He's the only one right now.
Probably there's another one, but I am not sure. He's more into ketogenic. So it's it might be difficult, but it's interesting and challenging to promote this human diet.
Yeah, that's perfect. It is human diet. Well, thank you guys for appearing. And I think there will be more doctors in the Philippines, and and you'll be one of the first. And so first of probably many, in my guess. Where do folks go to find out more about you guys? What's the name of the YouTube channel, and where can
it's just Asra Conlu, and my Instagram is also Asra Conlu.
Okay. So ASRA and then CNLU. That's right.
CONLU.
CONLU. Asra. And you're both on the same channel then?
Yeah. We're on that channel, right?
Okay. Well, perfect. Well, you guys thank you so much for appearing. And I know you've been up all night, I think. So appreciate you guys, and keep up the good work. And we'd love to have you back on down the road if that's okay.
Thank you so much for having us.
Okay. Take care. Have a great day. We'll see you later. Bye-bye. See you, everybody. Thanks for staying around, guys.
Visit MeatRx.com for carnivore recipes, research articles, success stories, and VIP interviews completely free. Become a member to get access to coaching, supportive community meetings, physicians list, forums, diet guides, discounts, workouts, and more. You can also ask your questions live from our VIP guests on our podcast.